Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Montreal Hacker again. We have a new guest here today. It's Rino Granito. Is a very good and skilled cybersecurity expert. But hi, Rino, and welcome to the Montreal Hacker. And please tell us something about you, like more
Okay.
details about who you are.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you very much. And thank you for having me on your wonderful show. It's a pleasure to be here. I'd like to wish the very best to everybody for 2024. Yes, Reno Granito. I started in IT in 1981. Came out of McGill. From there, we were working on mainframes, the old stuff. Good old COBOL, assembler, Fortran, the good stuff. And then eventually, I went back into the distributed because that's when it started. 83, 84. You started to seeing a lot more of distribution. Smaller PCs were coming about. The new 8088 chip, 8086 chip. So you had the first IBM computers, and people used them to replace the old Xerox, the old IBM word processing units, which were humongous. So it was great. And then they had more and more applications that came out on that. Then, of course, people wanted to interconnect. Then we brought them into the X25 network. I don't know if some of your people will understand what X25. It's an old frame relay that was used in the old days of the mainframes. But then we started interconnecting those. Once that was done, I would say 87, 88, 89, security became an issue, a big issue. That's when IBM came out with the Rainbow series. It was a complete series for different types of authentication, integrity, confidentiality. It was all brought into that document because on the mainframe side, we needed to do this. I mean, at that time, you had, by the way, one of the first hacking groups that was out there was called the Inner Circle. The Inner Circle was a group of 12. And they had the first one, the guy, well, I have to remember his name was Crackerjack. And the reason why he was called that is because in a box of Cracker Jacks, you had a whistle, okay, that had the same frequency as what Bell used to use for their long distance switch. So you would pick up a long distance, you would whistle this into the thing, and the building would stop at that moment. So, anyways, a
Wow.
little bit of tidbit on that one. So yeah, because Inner Circle was there, hacking was being available. Everybody had modems. They were connecting back into the mainframes, into the bigger systems. So security became an issue. From that, 87, 88, 89, security kind of not downplayed, it folded into what I would say the distributed environment. We're starting with Ethernet connections. We didn't have any firewalls. Everything was interconnected or switched. I remember the first ISP I had in Montreal in 92, 93. We were connected, we were bridged right across the Montreal mix onto the American network, and that was fine. Until we had Dan Farmer that came about, and Dan Farmer was the one who had all these vulnerability scanners and stuff like that. I digress. So yes, that was my thing. I've been on the ISO committee since '93 till 2003. I basically wrote a lot of input on the ISO 2700 series. That was quite interesting. Met a great bunch of people all around the world. That was a super experience. Worked with different types of industries in Canada. Worked with Computer Associates. I was down in the US all the time. Did a lot of consulting work for most of the bigger, uh, I would say, the financial institutions in Canada. Worked with the Ministère de la Santé, Quebec, Ontario. Did a lot of the private firms. Did a lot of stuff in the States with Strategic Command and stuff like that. So yeah, well-rounded and very good group of people. And cybersecurity started taking place around that time. The birth happened because we needed not just an ISMS, an information security management system, but we needed something specific for cyber defense. What it is, how do we work with that? What are the problems? What are the vulnerabilities? How do the actors from the external come in and actually take and exploit our systems and give us the grief that we have today? So
How's security doing in Canada? Cybersecurity doing right now?
it depends. I mean, for the big and most critical environments that we have in Canada, cybersecurity is well funded. It's well supported. So, and a good group of guys out there is fantastic people. For the others, because don't forget, Canada is 75% small and medium sized businesses. These people are more at, I'm going to say more at risk because they have a lot of confidence in either the providers, either a lot of them they're using des fonds numériques, so they're using cloud services. The intricacies of that, where are they responsible, where are they not responsible, is a little bit, it's gray, it's a gray area. So there's a lot of work that needs to be there. But most of all, fundamentally, the small and medium-sized businesses need to understand the risk that is associated, and often that is not well conveyed to them. There's a lot of manufacturers, there's a lot of good manufacturers that have great tools. However, they're the ones that need to use these tools and they need to understand how to use them. So I say there's a learning curve that needs to be done there. So a show like yours could be extremely beneficial to this audience, and they need to consume this because it is important for them to understand the fabric of what is cyber defense and why you're responsible. It doesn't matter if your application is in a cloud service, but you're still responsible for the data. So what happens if you have corruption at that level? What is the risk to your business? We're going to talk a little bit on that
Yeah,
during your show. So
absolutely. And what would you say are the vulnerabilities in the cybersecurity area in Canada? What should we improve?
awareness, and I say awareness quickly. Let me take that back. I think most importantly that what we need to understand is the concept of what is cybersecurity. What is the responsibility of the organization that is using that? The organization needs to make a conscious effort, okay, to understand what is critical for them. So if I take an accounting firm, a small accounting firm, which is fantastic, they need to understand what is critical to them. What are the applications that you use for your customers? Where do you store their data? Is it data that is sensitive? If you're using cloud services, how do they protect it? What are the contracts? They need to understand the level of risk that they have for their business. So it's basically what is important for my business and what are the items that can cause me problems. And this is where we need to expand and give them the help that they need, because I can understand a cloud service provider saying, "This is my contract. This is what I do," and they're fair. They're upfront about that. Sorry. But for the small business, he assumes that everything is all right. Unless there's a problem, then his customers are calling him. How come my data is all over the place? You didn't protect me. Now they're open to civil suits. So that's where they need to have a lot. That they need to have a lot of. We need to teach these people. We need to show them what the concepts are, how you look at the risk, what is your business, and what you can do without being IT. You don't have to be always IT. A good contract is a good place to start. Maybe you'll have two service providers instead of having one. There's different things you can look at. So I think that's where we need to really help the people at this moment for that.
Yeah, because cybersecurity, like people think that, basically cybersecurity doesn't bring any money, it doesn't sell anything. It
Right.
just that you just have to pay money, but I mean, it yeah, is an additional cost, right?
Well, everybody looks at it like an additional cost. You could say I can do cybersecurity, and it could be the overall cost of my IT. And if you have a good management structure, okay, with your IT team, you can actually have a lot of benefit from that without increasing your costs exponentially. Where the cost, where the costs become exponentially problematic for an organization is when you don't understand the value of the risk that you have versus the amount of money you'll spend on a countermeasure or on something. So, am I going to spend $1,000 to save a $300 problem? The answer is no. But if you don't know that it's a $300 problem, you're going to spend $2,000, $3,000 on it because you assume you're at risk. And I think that's the problem. I'm positive there's, there's a little bit of taking advantage at that level. So again, understand your business. What is your business? And a good architecture, a good common sense analysis will let you know what you need, how to go about it, and if we can provide more not incentive, but more concrete examples to the audience, this would be fantastic for them because it is what they need.
Patch or no patch? That's our
That's the question.
exactly.
But
That's our title for today.
right,
Yeah,
I love the title, patch or no patch, but I think we also need to understand is what to patch and when to patch it. And I agree, sometimes we cannot patch. We look at very complex systems that are they're hybrid, they're all over the place. Sometimes they cannot patch because they're putting the entire operation at risk. So again, it's an analysis of risk. What is it that I have? What's the risk if I patch and there's a problem? What is the risk to my business? If the risk is minimal, then you go ahead, you put some controls, you do it correctly. You go, I'm not going to patch all my systems at the same time. I'll do a little bit. It works good and I'll keep going and I'll have a plan and it's well managed. That's perfect. So the other thing is that often you cannot patch because you've bought a black box application or you have an application that relies, it's been supplied in a kind of it comes with the operating system. It's a complete system. It's not just an application. And they will have certain requirements that they say, no, you cannot touch this, you cannot patch, you cannot change until we do it and make sure that the environment works correctly because we are responsible for a system. So these systems you cannot patch. You have to work with the manufacturer. It could be the same thing. The manufacturer is going to say, I sell you an application that's going to work with X version of OS, but you can't patch it because if you do, well, therefore your warranty is not valid and you have to go back to the manufacturer and say, okay, do I have your approval to patch the system? Begs
what
the
is the
question.
solution then? Because if you don't patch, you're vulnerable, right? If well, how can you protect your assets?
Christian, that is a very, very intelligent question. And I'm really happy that you asked that question because are we vulnerable if we patch or don't patch? Do we need to patch everything? The answer is probably no. And if you look at the CVEs that come out, you'll notice often they will tell you, well, okay, we have a vulnerability, but there's no exploit for it. You can't exploit this vulnerability. So it's not going to put you at risk of saying that this system will not work correctly because nobody can exploit it at this particular time. You don't have to sweat patching this system. You could, if in a normal operational process, you could probably patch it, but you don't have to necessarily patch that because it's not critical. Sometimes if we have a system that is critical and we have a system that is important for the organization and we cannot patch it, then we need to do what we call a mitigation process. How can I keep this in the system, in the environment? How can I keep it operational while I can mitigate the likelihood of a threat agent to exploit this? How do I prevent somebody from exploiting this machine? So I need to know from my CVE, what are the actors? What are the threat actors? How do they exploit this? How can they get to it? And then I need to look at my structure. Is it possible for me just to remove maybe a daemon or a subset or a certain app that I don't really need, and therefore I've reduced my risk, my likelihood of having a disaster? Maybe I can I can put it on a different segment. I can have a firewall rule. I can have a little bit more monitoring. I can have different tools to do that. At the same time, I need to instruct my team that we have a vulnerability here that could be exploited. So we need to react to it very quickly. So the communication that we need to do to our environment, to our users, to our help desk, to our security guys is extremely important because your users are going to be the first one telling you something's wrong most of the time. So if they know and they're well educated, they become very important to you. So it's not just one thing, it's an entire slew of things, but do not neglect the communication to your team and your users because it is important they understand the situation. And you need to look at this every week and see what you can do. Normally, if you cannot patch, if you have a manufacturer, you can put some pressure on them. Probably if this happens too many times, you can put a condition in a clause in your contract. There's a few things you can do, but mitigation is the first thing you got to do. If you can't stop it, you need to look at it, need to observe it. And I got a bad cough. I'm sorry. See,
No,
I'm
it's
being
okay. It's
I
okay,
got a
everybody.
virus. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Uh,
But what is the best way of finding out uh, what's the current situation, let's say, a penetration test to find out what we should patch and what are.
Well, you have a lot of good scanners out there. There's a slew of good scanners available, very well renowned, well documented, easy to use, not too expensive. Some of them are offered by your uplink provider. So there's a whole bunch of tools you can use to do a vulnerability assessment on your environment. But before you do that, it is important that you understand your inventory. If I do a vulnerability assessment on 3/4 of my environment, well, I haven't done my correct job because I don't know if the other systems are vulnerable or not, or maybe they're being exploited and I have no idea. So your inventory is important. You need to understand what is critical to your environment. And when you do your vulnerability assessments, you can't not do the entire segment or the entire data center, either hybrid, whatever, internal. You cannot do that. You need to do it segment by segment. And then again, you'll need to have an authentication scheme if you want to connect to a lot of the servers. Use a admin account to make sure that you really take a look at all the internal functions, the configurations, the subsets, the subdaemons, that everything is well done on your environment so that you can have a better picture of your vulnerability assessment. Now, sometimes you don't want to do that, and that's fine. I understand that. It depends. It's a question of the team has to get together to understand what is critical, what is not critical, and to come up with a plan to do it. But it needs to be done on a regular basis. How regular? It depends on the environment, it depends on the critical systems, depends on the availability of the resources. You come up with a plan that you have a certain schedule and stick to the schedule.
eh,
One thing, I don't know
yeah,
if you could do that. There's a few links I'd like to get to you
sure, we could do that. Yep.
where people don't have scanning tools, okay? You can get all the information. There's a nice database. You put in the application you have with the version, and it'll give you the vulnerabilities that it has at that time. So you don't have to buy a system. If you only have maybe 2 or 3 servers, you can do it on a manual basis. It'll take you, once it's set up with an Excel sheet, it'll take you a couple of minutes and you have relevant information. So I'll do some research and get you a
Sure,
link
we
for
could
you
do that.
yeah, great.
So
So
once we have the whole thing, like, we do a scan and everything, how can we decide what to patch or no patch?
it has, first of all, when you do a vulnerability assessment, most of the tools that I know will give you a CVE with critical information. On that critical information, it'll tell you what's the problem, what you need to do to patch it if it's available, uh, the the ease of exploit. So some vulnerabilities are very easy to exploit. Therefore, the criticality of that is very high, and those are the ones you probably should patch first if you can. Like we said before, there's some systems you cannot patch. You have to look at systems that are your critical systems. Those have to be patched first. They need to be tested with the patch, and then you need to continue to do the patch. If you have systems that are internal and not accessed from the external, or they're environments that you cannot patch because, God forbid, if there is a downtime, it is critical to the operations of your organization, then you have to accept the risk and mitigate it. It's a choice, it's a decision that has to be done with the internal team, with the stakeholders, with the people who own the applications, and to come up with a concise information on how to do this. So that you probably need a small committee to make a decision on these systems we cannot patch, we need to accept the risk. So it's always an ongoing decision. Unfortunately, there's no one right answer that answers all the question. It is system by system, environment by environment, organization by organization. Also, I forgot to mention this. It is also important to understand the level of expertise that you have internal to your shop to be able to do this work. I am not putting anybody down. Sometimes patching can be critical, not in the patch process, but in the recovery process. So you need to have a team that is extremely well versed on that. So you can patch and then you can, if there is a correction to be done, you need to do a correction. So these are things you need to look at. Unfortunately, I'd like to give you an answer saying, okay, this is the golden rule. There isn't one. You have to look at what is critical for your environment, what is a cost benefit if you have a problem, so you understand your risk. You have to look at what the risk is, how it's being applied. You have to understand the environment that you have. Is this am I in cloud? Am I not in cloud? Do I have third-party manufacturers that I need to talk to? So you need to look at all that, and at the same time, it would be nice that you supplement all this information, that you document it either in a ticketing system or in some sort of a change management database, because this is important information.
Can we use the scoring system, CVSS, as well?
Of course, of course, of course. But you can use it. I think what I also would like to do with that, sometimes you can, is if you take that scoring system and you look at your critical systems in your environment, and then you come up to an equation that gives you the risk profile of your environment versus the CVE. You know what I'm saying? So this is critical, this is this CVE, so bang, this is a high, it's a P1 or a P0, whatever you want to call it. And therefore, it gives you it's easier for you to understand when you're looking at the patching, non-patching. Oh, these are critical, I got to get those done correctly, so this is my priority. And it gives you more time to look at it, to understand it. So you're not scrambling all over the place. But that's a very good idea, Christian. I mean, most organizations should have some sort of a table on that. So quickly, you just go, oh, okay, this is it. These are these systems, and away we go with that. So that's an excellent idea. I like
Do,
that.
do you think artificial intelligence will solve our problems, security problems?
Here's the thing. Artificial intelligence, and this is just me now, is an excellent tool on a knowledge-based environment. So if I have my organization, my cybersecurity well defined, okay, the processes, an AI will certainly be very helpful. We're a collection of AIs. However, an AI at this moment cannot or should not be able to think outside of the box. It is very hard for it to imagine scenarios or to make a decision when you don't have all the facts. Sometimes decisions have to be made in an organization and you don't have all the facts, so you're taking a chance. And so AI, I think, on the knowledge, an AI that will assist a cyber defense team, absolutely. Well defined, well processed, a good management environment, it would be an extremely valuable asset to have. They don't get tired, they're there 24/7, they will work flawlessly if they're well maintained. So yes, is it a good asset? Absolutely. Do you want them to go out and take a look if there's an ongoing process, an ongoing attack? They can even do on the fly CMM. Are we sufficiently What's the efficacy of our process? Is it okay? AI will help you with that. It's not political. It's not, you know what I'm saying? It's down to earth. So this is very important in these in either in management, in deterring attacks, and also in supporting a team that's out there.
Suppose you are hired by a company, let's say, and they will ask you to do a risk assessment and have a security posture. What would you do? What would be your steps in order to have a good result? And
The- Am I and there's and I'm not trying to sidestep the question. But am I hired from the C level, the CIO, CISO, or am I hired from CISO down in the operational side? And why I'm asking that, because if I'm on the operational side, I expect to have some sort of directives from my organization, say, okay, we need to be compliant for ISO 2700. I want you to do this. I want this. I have a certain idea of what the expectation, what the requirements are from this organization. Then I can do an audit based on that, an audit that would be based on a CMM audit, if you want. Do we have the right personnel in place? Do we have the right processes? Do we have the right tools? Do we have the right technical knowledge? And we can do that. Then we can actually go a little bit further and do a gap analysis on the risk of the environment. What are the risks? What's this? What's that? Do we understand everything? The whole traditional thing. Then you look at the assets, you look at the definition of that, you look at the CMDB, and then you do an entire project on that, and you give them some sort of a gap analysis. This is where you are, this is where you need to be based on your compliance, and these are the steps that you need to do. Now, either you want to go ITIL, either you want to go Lean Six, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's as long as you know what you're going and where you need to be. On the other side of the equation, where I think there's a lot of missteps. Sometimes it's misunderstood. The business often, usually a bigger organization, has a failure of understanding exactly what is a critical business posture. What is critical to us? What is critical to my mission? What is critical to our culture? What is critical to the vision of this organization? What do I need to do, okay, to become more, and that these are the VPs, the people who run that company should be able to tell you that. Often they don't. They just follow. Okay, everybody does that, so we'll do this. Not necessarily being the right solution, and not necessarily being also the most uh, dollar wise investment of their time. So on the other side would be more of a business analysis in terms of risk to the business. On the other side is basically a pure compliance audit that you'll do from top to bottom and looking at different types of audits you need to do internally to that organization. So I hope that answered it a little bit, but
yeah, what would be your advice for young cybersecurity experts who actually they start their career, and what is very often I think it's hard to get into cybersecurity. However, we can see everywhere, oh, we need experts and cybersecurity experts. But on the other hand, it's hard to find a job. I mean, for young, especially for young people with no experience.
no experience. That is the issue. You're absolutely right on that. I faced that too at the beginning. You never had the good jobs. You got the bad shifts. You took crap from everybody. I shouldn't say that, but it comes from top down. So what they have to do is they need, I believe, okay, they need to understand that if you go into cybersecurity for the glamour and the big bucks for tomorrow morning, chances are it won't happen. You have to prove your mettle. You have to prove your integrity. You have to prove your worth. And you do that by doing the work. You can write, if you're not in the field, you can read, write, There's a lot of courses out there that are being done, which are good. It gives you a good idea of the verbiage, what we're talking about, the concepts, excellent. And then I would suggest that, you write articles and you contribute to a magazine, to a forum, get involved, go to the shows, get to rub shoulders with some of the people out there. You need to establish a thing, your group of contacts. So you need to do that. And then hopefully your visibility, because you have more visibility, you will get some offers, and you will get some jobs. But I think cybersecurity is going to be a field, which is going to require way more people than we have right now. I don't think I don't think we're close to being what we need in terms of good people in cybersecurity. But a little antidote. When I started in the field, security, especially when I was in IBM and I wrote and I helped them write the Rainbow series. And what was the person's name? Miller something. I forgot. And the first thing he told me about security, he says, Reno, if you want to make it in security, learn how to sell. I was taken aback. You want me to learn how to sell? He goes, yes, because management knows absolutely nothing. And if you don't know how to explain it to them, they'll never believe you. So I'm just saying that like that, but actually, in all my experience, it turned out to be quite true. And I'm not saying anything bad about management. Management has their own problems, their own things. They need to understand things very simply. If I'm investing $1, I'm getting $1.25 in return. They need terms very simple. And I think that is something that a lot of the security guys don't have. They cannot articulate the requirements, the risks, and the needs. And that is important. So that would be something I might like to focus on, and learn how to talk about this, talk to other people, see how they react and stuff. So that would be my recommendation.
Some people believe that if you have the most expensive tools and the most sophisticated tools, you are protected. What is the most important thing? Like being have a good understanding of what cybersecurity is and what's your environment, or buying like tools and trying to install them and use them in a way that if you have, like, let's say, I don't know, 5 tools, very expensive ones, as hey, I'm very well protected, or it is more important to understand what you want to protect and how.
So if I understand the question, is it better to have a great carpenter that has normal tools, or is it good to have a carpenter who has great tools? Now, that's a chicken or the egg question, and I'll tell you why. If I look at it purely from the tool perspective, okay, we just look at the tools. Obviously, if someone has very good tools, the job becomes easier. Not necessarily saying that the person grasps the risk concept of his environment, but he has good tools. He might look good to his peers. Makes sense. A good security person might have normal tools and he'll still look good to his peers because he is a good cyber defense person. Which is better? Well, I would tend to say that imagination, creativity, knowledge is understanding the processes, the concepts, understanding your environment, your company would trump a set of tools that do not necessarily have concept. Now, this is where it gets very convoluted if I add the equation of AI to the tools. Do the tools have knowledge? Do they become just as good as my security guy? I can't answer that right now. I really can't, because we need to understand what the AIs are, how they are, where the evolution of this is, and maybe in some cases, in not too complex environment, a collection of AIs and good tools could do the job with a good management structure on top of that. That could work. So unfortunately, I hate to tell you that, Christian, it is very hard to answer that question. We don't know, and we see the technology evolving so much that we have to look at this and say, maybe if I can put this collection of stuff in a cloud, and people can connect to it and become a knowledge base, that could be quite interesting as a tool. So real simple. We have to look at it. So that's an open-ended question. I would like
Yeah.
to come back on that and actually explore that a little bit more in detail because I think this is where we're heading. This is the future.
Reno, thank you very much for your time, and we will post the links you know send,
Yes,
and if people have questions, they could contact you, or they could,
absolutely.
yeah. And
Absolutely. Absolutely. It would be my pleasure to do that. Again, it was my pleasure being on your show. I really enjoyed this. Hopefully, we can do some more and have some follow-up. And Christian, thank you very, very much for having me on board. Truly enjoyed it.
thank you very much, and yeah, talk to you soon. Bye.
Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.